probably very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to put you on hold, Ted, and I'll be back in about 4 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, no screaming, though.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, this is Gary from Night Dreams Talk Radio. I want to welcome a new sponsor to our show, PhoenixShaving.com. I know what you're thinking, right? Oh, another disposable razor company. Well, the fact is they're not. You remember the razors that your father and his father shaved with? Did you ever notice they didn't have, well, the embarrassing razor burn or ingrowing hairs or the razor bumps after they shaved? Did you notice they were also relaxed after they were done shaving? Well, the problem is these big corporations want to sell you razor after razor after razor. Think about how much money you spend a year on razors. Or do you use electric razor? Then you're going to find out what razor burn is. So you need to check out Phoenix Shaving Starter Kits. They come complete with the soap, the brush, and a 2.5-month supply of blades, and the most important part of it, a all-metal razor, built to last generations. So, hey, you can donate it to one of your sons when they turn 18. Check out PhoenixShaving.com and tell them that Gary from Night Dream said, hey, I want one. That's PhoenixShaving.com now.
Our intro music is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Night Dreams Talk Radio. And now, here's Gary.
Yeah, and here I am. Tonight we're going to talk about ancient giants. You know, did they walk the earth? Are they still walking the earth in some places? And what the Bible says about giants. We're going to bring Ted on here, and he is going to, well, tell us all about giants. Ted, are you there? Okay.
Hello?
Hello, are you there, Ted? Are you there, Ted?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am, yeah.
Okay, well, how's your day been going for you?
Well, so far so good. Yeah, like I say, I did get called in for jury duty this morning, but I ended up getting out of it because we had a mare that was about ready to foal. So yeah, they let me home for that. But yeah, it's going great. Thanks.
Oh wow. Yeah, we have a couple miniature horses. I'm still trying to figure what they're really good for, other than giant pets that eat eat a lot and that are very, very expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you let them in the house like dogs?
No, but I actually knew somebody that brought them in the house, and I don't know if I would want to bring one in the house and then have to clean up after it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
What about goats?
Yeah, they're made for outside.
Oh yeah. What were you saying, Kevin?
Oh, I said, what about goats?
Well,
I knew some people that were bringing in goats in their house, and they're always going in and out.
Yeah.
of the house.
Well, goats would be kind of a real hassle because, how can I say it? You'd always have to be picking up on them. I'm not sure. I mean,
Yeah, my nephew, actually, he lives next door to us, and he has some goats. He's been raising it. I suppose he's got a couple hundred now, and yeah, it's been kind of a nightmare this winter because it got cold. Some of the males got out when they weren't supposed to, so they've been having kids, and it was like 20 below, 30 below, and here they're having these kids, and they're just not meant for that. And so, yeah, that was like a little nightmare. But they're kind of an interesting animal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, I just fixed that microphone.
Oh, sounds like you did.
Yeah. Wow. I won't even tell you what I did. So, Ted, why don't you tell everybody, about your book and what got you into writing about ancient giants?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. This is a real pleasure, a real treat for me just to be on here. But it's one of my other jobs is an airline pilot, and we were sitting on the tarmac one day, and the guy I was flying with, he happened to carry a Bible around with him all the time. Now, of course, my book really isn't religious, but it is based off of Genesis 6:4, because he pulled. I don't know what we were talking about, but he pulled his Bible out and he pointed Genesis 6:4 out to me, and he says, "Well, what do you think of this? This kind of sounds like Greek mythology, doesn't it?" And it's like, well, I had read the Bible before, but a lot of that stuff is so confusing, you just kind of blow over it. But when he pointed it out to me and I looked at it, I'm like, wow. Never really noticed that, and so that's what got me started. If for those of you that aren't familiar with Genesis 6:4, it's a short little verse here, but it's there were giants in the earth in those days. Are you familiar? Have you heard it before?
No, I hate to say, I'm ashamed to say no. So go ahead.
No, I mean that's no, because I hadn't either, but. You're just reading along, and it's right at the very beginning, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And there's just that little blurb, and then nothing else. Next thing you know, the earth's getting flooded, and it's like, well, wait a minute, I want to know more about that. So that's what got me really looking into it. And at the time, I thought, wow, this, I think I got a good idea for a story here. Initially, I was thinking a movie, which I have written a screenplay now, and I'm working on that. But that's what got me started, and then I started researching this, and then it leads you from going down a rabbit hole, and there are so many things across the planet that back that up. But the fact that there was only that brief little snippet in the Bible and nothing else really. Was kind of a surprise, Well, it's like,
I'm not too religious, but from what I know about reading from the Bible is that giants, they came from like the angels that rebelled against God, and the angels mated with the humans, and it created like some sort of like offspring, and the offspring were these giants.
Interesting.
That's exactly what happened, so, according to the stories. And it's in the Bible. There's legends all over the world that have a similar story. The Sumerians, same thing. I mean, it's just all over the planet. Little slightly different variations to it, but there's enough to make you think, well, maybe there is something to it. And that's what got me going, and that's how it is when you start researching something, and it leads to something else, and to something else, and next thing you know, it's like, wow, how did I get here? But it's totally it totally kept me driven for just the whole time I was writing the novel. I mean, I stretched it out over probably 4 years, just doing all the research for it. But I found it fascinating. Everything that I kept finding out about that civilization that's just barely touched on, and that led me to all these ancient ruins, with the unexplainable huge stones, like even the Great Pyramid, but all the ones down in Peru, and all over the planet, these huge stones, and there's all these, well, how did they do it? How did they lift them? How did they move them? And maybe this civilization had something to do with it. Maybe not, but there's stories in all their folklore too that do say yes, they were there and they did have something to do with it.
Well, that's what, everything I have, researched. And I've actually had a couple different guests on here, and we talked about giants and stuff like that. I mean, the one guest I had on said they kind of like eating humans. So, I mean, that was one of them. And, and it just, it's a possibility. And then that the humans kind of actually killed them off. I mean, there's so many different stories about it. And then, if you search around and stuff, they, every so often you'll see where they supposedly found a skull of a giant or bones of a giant. But then, that stuff is locked up for, me and you can't find it. So, I mean, I don't know. It's almost like the UFO type of story, I mean, I don't think they want to maybe, admit that maybe there were giants walking the earth and,
Well, that's kind of a funny thing that you mentioned that they don't want to, that they kind of lock it up because, when the white man came to North America, and then they started, as they started advancing and moving across the country, building the roads and railroads and what have you. And I'm sure you're familiar with all the mound builders. There's all these mounds that were, a lot of them were Ohio, Wisconsin, and just throughout that part of the country. But I think there was a lot more of them too. But when they were putting these roads in and other things too, farmers would dig in their fields and they'd in one of these mounds and they'd start finding these skeletons, and a lot of them were giants, and they would. Like even up to I think the tallest I've read, and these were like hundreds and hundreds of articles that made it into the New York Times, the Washington Post, I believe too, but several of them in the New York Times, and they would find these skeletons that were 8, 9, 10, 12 feet, 18 feet tall, and the story would get published. The Smithsonian would show up, and next thing you know, the bones would disappear, and where'd they go? No one's seen them since, but they did have the article published. Now, of course, a lot of those, I'm sure several of them were probably hoaxes, but all of them, there was one of them down in San Diego that was kind of interesting, and I think that giant, was that a 9-footer? That was, let's see, I've got an article here. Yeah, 1895 is when they found this thing, and they even took a picture with a guy standing next to it in the article. And then Smithsonian, they showed up and they bought it. They paid for it, which would be, in terms of our money today, it was like $14,000 or $15,000 for this. Took it, and then when somebody later on, they said, they referenced it, wanted to see it or talk about it. They said, that thing was just fake. It was made out of gelatin or something. It's like, so you paid $14,000 for a fake? That's kind of a, I don't know. It's a little bit of a red flag, but. There's stories like that all over where the Smithsonian. I hate to point fingers. I mean, I've never even been to the Smithsonian or I don't know anyone that works there, and I hate to blame them for this stuff. But you do keep reading and hearing about this over and over again. I'm sure you've heard the same.
Yeah, it makes me really concerned about, cover-ups and stuff like this. I just really think they don't want the people to know about it. Maybe they feel that maybe me and you can't, live with it. I mean, I think it would probably freak out and scare a lot of people.
Well, yeah, that's, and then there's always the question, well, why? Why would they cover it up? Why? That's a good question. Some of the things I hear, it's like, well, it kind of blows evolution out of the water, and it's like because it doesn't really go in line with what they've been teaching as far as that goes. Maybe there's more to it than that. Who knows? The funny thing, because a lot of these stories that they were when they were finding them in the U.S., that was the ones that were published were in the mid to early 1800s and even up into the mid 1900s actually. And Abraham Lincoln